on my trip, I finished the library at Hellebore, and honestly, I have a lot to say about it, but not as much as some other books because it wasn't that good. Um, it was a cool concept, but and the world building was good, but it was not the greatest plot. And honestly, sometimes it'd be okay to read a book that's just like cool world building and like cool concept, but only usually if there's like more. uh I feel really mean saying this. I wrote notes. I'm gonna just start by saying it could be technically set in the same world as Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children. If you've read that, it's like a very similar vibe. Like it's a book for children who grew up reading about schools for the magical and the supernatural. And I would include that with like Percy Jackson and stuff. Like it's all in that kind of universe of kids with way too much power kind of trying to figure out where they fall in the world and how to live. Every child in the book has different powers, and each of them is potentially world ending. And I think that's one of the things that definitely separates this book from other books is it's very overpowered. And it's kind of funny. Um, I usually enjoy better power scaling, you know, where there's like a way to distinguish people who have more power or less power. With this one, it's like every single one of these kids could literally end the world, and that's kind of funny. The book itself, as I'm sure you saw when I was holding it up, is very well designed and pleasant to read. Let me grab it again. So, the cover, beautiful. It's the reason why I picked out this book. The pages, blue. Very cool. The end sheets are very pretty. The fig and stuff is very symbolic of the book. There's an entire weird series that really creeps me out. Beautiful typeface, you know, very pleasant. Trying to find examples. There's these little like insects all through the book, which is kind of cool. Trying to find, there was like one other thing that I thought was interesting. I mean, all the chapter openers are fine. Like, it's just pleasant. Like, it's a pleasant typeface. It's a pleasant font size. The margins aren't too big. They're not too small. It feels well spaced out. I will say that. While I have it in my hand, it says, "This school will eat you alive." Gory, gruesome, and gloriously gripping, the author of Gothic Canna. As rich and as gruesome as a fresh-plucked heart, as sharp as a broken bone, a perfect horror novel by one of my favorite writers, Alex Harrow. Wonderful, inventive, and thoroughly engrossing, Kelly Armstrong. Do I know any of these people? There we go. There's one by someone I know. Devilishly entertaining, thrillingly structured, and full of unexpected blows to the heart, Nat Cassidy. I just noticed that this book was $30. Listen, I spend money on books, but $30 for a book this small, even when it's that well designed, I don't know. That's a little excessive. Let's see. It's very violent, and it's similar or suggestive of like Harry Potter. Like it's that kind of vibe too. Like there's a lot of more like gray characters. There's a lot between like professors and students. One of the biggest characters, which is really weird, is the librarian. Honestly, I'm gonna say this book felt like it was supposed to be for me, but ended up with me not being the demographic. And that's really strange to me because I'm like, I grew up reading these books. I'm about the right age for this book. You know, it's like pretty morbid, it's pretty graphic. It's definitely an adult book. It would not be for children. I kind of wish it was a TV show because it reminds me of a little bit of like the originals or something. Whatever. Um, it takes place in a world adjacent to ours, so memes exist, etc. Um, it reminds me of a more explicit version of Wednesday, like the TV show about the Addams family. It feels sometimes like there's characters that kind of could go between those two worlds. I made a note that the author must really love anatomy because there's so much of it in the book, and I mean like really specific, disturbing anatomy. Um, they also wrote Nothing But Blackened Teeth, which I've seen going around horror book spheres. I saw it recommended several times on Instagram. I saw it recommended, I think, on Book Talk when I was still on Book Talk. I'm not active there anymore. But you know, I might read it at some point. It's definitely not high up on my list because I didn't enjoy this book very much, but you know, it might be better. Um, I find that's often too on the nose and trying too hard. There's just certain lines from the book, and I'm tempted to like try to pull up an example, but it's just sometimes they're like the jokes are like too. It's like dad jokes, you know, where it's just like okay. Like, for example, my dad takes a photo of a fork that was left on the street in the middle of a road and goes, ha, there's a fork in the road. And I'm like, wow, cool. Or like he leaves a leak in the sink and then he's like, wow, there's a leak in the sink. I'm like, okay. Like, that's kind of how I felt while reading this book. Like, if you're in the mood for that kind of humor, it's definitely for you. Is it a bit too mysterious? I know you were supposed to show and not tell, but this is too much. Actually, I'm gonna be honest. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is so much worse than The Library at Hellebore that, like, I feel bad even saying this about Library at Hellebore because Library at Hellebore was so much better written than this next book I'm gonna talk about. I honestly, like, kind of have lost that opinion, but it's true. There's a lot of scenes where you're just like, sometimes just give a little bit more context. The afterword was the most unnecessary thing ever. And then my last thought on this was I feel like the book was a cross between really cool and good and incredibly boring and kitsch. And I stand by that. I think that's a really accurate assessment of this book. I'd say kitsch is a really accurate description. I don't know. I just not for me, I think perhaps for someone else. Um I love the design of the book. Um, I'm glad that they put so much effort into the way it looks, and that's what got me. I always judge a book by its cover, and that's on me.